I remember a bishop saying one time that people in the congregation have no idea what a priest does.
Yeah.
And then they added, well, and actually priests don't have any idea what a bishop does. Yeah. That until you're actually in the role, you don't get the diversity and complexity of the role and the delicate kind of balance you're trying to work in the scenario. And I guess I would say that I have learned through the years, again, coming from a non-Anglican background and for 20 years, not in full-time ministry, but being a part of a congregational kind of church, I witnessed a few splits within the church because of personality differences, and there was no outside support what was happening within that congregation. As an Anglican priest, I had, I guess I would say, sort of a more secure situation in that I wasn't alone. Like, this isn't something that I had to appease everyone. I had a support outside of that.
I'm sure as a priest, you tended to hear from all sorts of people, but especially the people who thought you did something wrong or needed to correct you on some point of theology or a change they think you should make within the parish. And that tends to be when you hear from people is when they don't like something or they have a complaint and when things go wrong. And so today we're going to discuss and talk about what does leadership look like in the Anglican Church? Who is in charge? Why do we have what looks like a very hierarchical structure? And in some ways it very much is, but there's more to it than simply a top-down approach to leadership, not only within the parish, but within the larger diocese or wherever location you're in. And it's not hopefully just about dealing with the negative things or the complaints that people maybe have sometimes. It's also about caring for people and making sure congregations are taken care of and have the resources they need and taking care of the priests and the parish leaders, because it can be an isolating job, I'm sure, sometimes.
Yep.
So we're here, just to explore who is in charge and what are they doing and how do we understand the role of bishops or priests or whoever those titles are or whatever those titles are. So thanks for joining us today for Pray Tell. I'm Trevor.
And I'm Al.
And we're happy to have you. So why does this leadership or this hierarchy matter of we have parish priests, we have, I don't know, what comes after parish priest in the Anglican Church? Is it like we have regional deans?
We have, I suppose if you want to look at the bigger structure, we've got a parish priest and then we have divided up into deaneries, we call them, which is anywhere from 5 to maybe 8 different churches. And there's a regional dean that's part of that group. And then we have archdeaconries, which are 2 deaneries put together. So you're up to be 10 and 14 parishes, and there's an archdeacon over that. And then we have the bishop who is over the diocese. And most of those titles, archdeacon, regional dean, they're to help facilitate the care of the larger group, the diocese as a whole. And I think, for some people from the outside, it can look like a very rigid hierarchy. But I think what's being attempted is something that is very, very challenging to bring about in an organization or something organic, as a church is supposed to be organic, is this concept of priesthood of all believers, so that all Christians who are part of an individual parish were to learn from each other, were to grow together, were to discern how we love and care for the community around us and how we live our faith out in that community. But at the same time, in order to be efficient and well cared for and staying focused and on track, we need some kind of leadership. And so how does that happen? So I think the Anglican Church attempts the impossible. We attempt to have a leadership organization that nurtures and cares for the larger entity, and to also try to nurture that we are a community of believers. So we kind of attempt the impossible, and sometimes it goes well, and sometimes it doesn't go well.
I wonder if some of the confusion or not understanding what it looks like is just simply the names.
Yeah.
Right? Because they are old Latin words that I don't even think always had anything to do originally with church. It was like Roman ways of ordering society, and then they've been transferred to, right?
Yeah, and they've been, I mean, we can read through the New Testament, we can see the word deacon in there, and we see in the Acts of the Apostles a desire to create some kind of structure to care for people. So they identify the fact that for whatever reason, the widows were not being cared for. They lived in a society where that was a reality, that widows were not cared for. They were the poorest of the poor, the least powerful next to children probably within the community. And the early Christians realized this is not right. This is not the way it should be. So we're going to organize ourselves to make sure nobody falls through the cracks, so to speak. We're caring for everybody.
Right.
And so the concept of deacon was a concept of someone who is in a church community and identifies what's needed in the community back to the other community and looks after that. Then we can encounter another word in the New Testament, presbyter, where the word priest emerged from a Christian perspective, although, of course, Judaism had priests.
Yeah.
But the concept of a Christian priest is different than the concept of Jewish priest, because the priest is not an intermediary between the people and God in a Christian understanding. It's simply the person that is ensuring that the focus of this group stays on the gospel. And then bishop, it's just another level of that oversight, so to speak.
Yeah.
But we have attempted, as I said, to maintain this sense of priesthood of all believers. So our structures, our parish councils, our annual meetings, our annual synod gatherings, which are the whole diocese, we've divided up into ways to try to work together as a community, ensuring that we stay on track.
Other churches and church groups throughout the years have looked at this kind of structure and said, we don't want to do that. And I've said this before, I grew up in a non-denominational church, and so every congregation was autonomous. There was no regional this or diocese level that. Our church still had deacons and elders and a minister, but I have a distinct memory of when I was a kid or growing up, and a little bit of a sense of it's much better to be completely autonomous and not have someone above you telling you what you need to do, kind of a thing. And that's a very, very strong sentiment in that church or similar ones still today, at least some of them. And now I'm here where, I've been learning about all of these things like synod and these big meetings that take place, not even just within the Diocese of New Westminster, but of all of BC or Canada, and all these kinds of ways that we work to bring people together, as you said. It's very starkly different from what I knew growing up.
Yeah. And I think, I agree, as I've said before, not a created Anglican, didn't come from this background. Now, the denomination I was a part of, people might from the outside think it's a congregational church, just that one little area, but no, it was connected to a larger group and had a similar structure, but used different titles for this overseeing structure. And I think maybe it might be helpful to talk a little bit about the concept of a diocese, like where this concept came from. How does this even work? And I think because, the Anglican communion is huge. It's worldwide.
Yeah.
And so it's a concept that has emerged through history and the history of the church, as we've said before the 1500s, going way back to at least the 200s or 300s. And the idea was that you've got a group of Christians in a geographical area. So how do we keep some support for this group in this geographical area? And if you only got 20 people in one little area, well, that's not enough people to form a diocese, but that's certainly enough to be a congregation on their own. So then you might have a very large geographical area where you've got multiple groups of small groups of Christians, and you want to be able to support one another. You want to be able to know that you're not isolated, you're not alone, that the body of Christ is huge, and you're part of this large body of believers. And so that's where the concept of diocese has come from. And then the understanding is that the bishop, we'll start with the bishop. The bishop is someone who has had education, has had formation and shaping to be able to keep people focused on their relationship with Christ. You don't get sidetracked on something that somehow leaves the gospel behind. And is that a flawless system? No, it's not.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean it works perfectly. And then the priest is over an individual congregation within this group, and they're not an entity to themselves. They're the representative of the bishop within this congregation. Then the congregational members are the ones that are sort of shaping and forming. But one of the ways in which our system, I guess, is different from others is, if a priest is in a congregation and it's identified by a few members of the congregation that perhaps we need to be caring for group A over here, and I'll use really maybe historic terms. Maybe we'll say there's a leper colony outside and we need to be caring for them and loving them and making sure they're well cared for, and other members of the congregation are going, that's too high risk, we can't do that. And then the priest is saying, the one that's saying, no, we need to do this. Well, they think, well, let's get rid of this leader then because we don't agree with their line of thinking. Well, they can't do that.
Right.
There's a bigger group involved here. The bishop is involved in this then. They can call to the bishop and say, we think things are going in the wrong direction. But when the bishop gets involved in a scenario where the people think it's going in the wrong direction, it's not the bishop alone that gets involved. The bishop would come with an archdeacon, would come with other people that are part of that support.
Sure.
So we've got a system where we're trying to live out the priesthood of all believers, but at the same time, we're trying to make sure that we're actually doing what we're called to do. And sometimes not everybody wants to do that.
It reminds me, or it makes me think a little bit about, like, there's this whole, I guess, accountability piece that's also built into this kind of structure.
Yeah.
That's maybe not in less structured churches or denominations. And that strikes me as being a really important thing. And it's not to say that the Anglican Church does it best, or there's lots of other denominations that have good structures with accountability built in. But one thing I've been on council, or I was on council here for a number of years. And so I was able to kind of learn and see some of the different things that are in place.
Yeah.
And I know of examples of other churches where when things have gone awry, it doesn't always get handled in the best way.
Yep.
Without these procedures and policies in place that spell out, here's how you do this properly. And I know that's not interesting to a lot of people. It is quite boring, but it's important. And for good or for bad, nowadays, the the parish priest or the archdeacon or the bishop, they are managers in that sense of these kinds of things too. It's not just about being a shepherd for your congregation. Like, I mean, you take on as a priest a lot more than simply Sunday morning.
Yes.
Preaching.
Yes. I remember a bishop saying one time that people in the congregation have no idea what a priest does.
Yeah.
And then they added, well, and actually priests don't have any idea what a bishop does.
Yeah.
That until you're actually in the role, you don't get the diversity and complexity of the role and the delicate kind of balance you're trying to work in the scenario. And I guess I would say that I have learned through the years, again, coming from a non-Anglican background, and for 20 years, not in full-time ministry, but being a part of a congregational kind of church, I witnessed a few splits within the church because of personality differences, and some pretty ugly stuff in some scenarios happening.
Yeah.
And there was no outside support for it. Was just what was happening within that congregation. And realizing that, and being part of ministerial groups of multiple clergy from multiple denominations, and realizing I had, I guess I would say, a more secure situation in that if there was a personality conflict within a particular parish, in my parish, that I wasn't alone, and I was an archdeacon as well, and that role is certainly to support the priest in these scenarios, and to take situations to a bishop where the larger church can step in and go and identify. If there is a problem with the priest, then that gets identified. And then the bishop comes in and the pastoral care takes there. If it's a personality issue within the congregation, then that gets identified, but it's getting identified with a support function, not as who's going to win this battle.
Yeah. I know of examples where not having that kind of support or those systems in place has, at least from my outside perspective, things could have gone a lot differently or been handled a lot better. And the feelings that can get hurt, that's maybe too light to say, but the real pain and hurt people can experience when it's if it's a personality thing or you have different factions that form, it can be really awful.
Well, and I think that the reality is the gospel is challenging.
Yeah.
If the gospel's not challenging us as individuals to look at our lives and make some changes, then we're not listening. And so if you've got a scenario where there's some personality conflicts within a group, and the clergy are on their own like an island, then it may affect how they approach preaching. I mean, it may be difficult because their job's at jeopardy, right? So, but in our scenario as a priest, my job's not in jeopardy for saying some challenging things in a sermon. Even if I know there are members in the congregation that this is not going to sit as well with them as others. And you might know that when you get up to preach and realize that this is going to be a tough week after this. But at the same time, you realize your job's not in jeopardy.
Right. And,
that's the sense of the gospel cutting like a two-edged sword. As a priest preparing, you start to realize, oh my gosh, the Lord is speaking into my life to make some changes. And so, who's in charge? Jesus is in charge. And that's what we're attempting to live out.
When it comes to, you can't please everyone, but you also need to still be a shepherd in a sense, or someone that people can trust and hopefully stand to be in your presence.
Yes.
Or hopefully more than that. But historically here, not meaning at St. Matthew's, but in the Lower Mainland, in Canada too, in our diocese, how have some of these different structures that are in place in terms of making big decision-making things or meetings and gatherings we have, how have those been used, for example, address the issue of gay marriage? Because that's been quite a long time now here where
It
has been resolved, so to speak.
Well, I don't know about, I mean, it remains controversial,
yes.
right? And not just within the Anglican Church, it remains controversial in other churches as well. And I was going to use an example of ordination to the priesthood of women and how the Anglican Church functions in a way that other groups that also have a similar, I guess, at least term-wise structure of bishop, priests, and deacons, but are very much hierarchical as to how that lives out. If there's something that's, say, being discussed between, well, you've mentioned Lutheran, I'll use them, and Anglican Church, we have come together in full communion, but that wasn't easy because the Lutheran Church is more hierarchical than we are. So they could sit down and have a meeting together and come to a decision as to how they're going to move forward. And the response of the Anglicans in that meeting would be, we will take this back to the House of Bishops. The House of Bishops will then take it back to their diocese, and then we will have to see whether the church is in support of this idea, which is an indication that we're not very hierarchical.
Sure.
Because we're working from a synod level. Now, with the ordination of women, I served in a parish when I was first ordained as an assistant, and the person who was the rector had been part of what we call as General Synod, which is Anglicans from across Canada joining. And of course, the ordination of women becomes a General Synod situation, not individual diocese. And there was a vote at that General Synod to approve the ordination of women. And this is before my time in the Anglican Church, but from what I understand, they made people stand for that vote so that you could be very clear on the count because it was pre-electronic stuff.
Sure.
And he was one of the person that I served. He was my supervisor, one of 6 clergy that stood opposed. So he had to stand up in this group of 300 people and was opposed. Now it passed overwhelmingly. And then he returns to his parish. And at the next chance, this was before I got there, the next student that they're looking to find a placement in a parish, he asked for a female. He asked for, and people in the congregation were like, didn't you vote against this? And he was like, yes, I did, but the church has spoken.
Yeah. So
now I have to be supportive of it. My view is not the thing that's in charge. I'm part of a bigger picture. And I think when we talk about gay marriage, it's a similar kind of thing. He could have remained opposed and not done any action to move that forward within his congregation. And that may have been, the congregation may have wanted to move forward, but it would have just been him serving himself instead of the bigger picture.
Yeah.
But he was willing to move forward, and maybe when he was gone, then the congregation could move forward. And the sense of gay marriage, nowhere has it ever been said that any clergy had to officiate at a gay marriage if they weren't, if that was going to be against their conscience.
Yeah.
It's been made very clear no one's being forced to do something that they would struggle doing. But at the same time, those that would be struggle doing it, they're being asked to remain in communication with those who wouldn't struggle with it.
The general public doesn't understand that, like other Christian groups. That's my experience. They just know the Anglican Church is, that's the church that blesses same-sex marriages or performs them.
Yeah.
And sure, I guess on a very basic level, that's true.
Yep.
But I remember when we first started, my wife and I exploring different Anglican churches, one of the questions we asked, because inevitably the priest would come up and introduce him or herself. That was what question we asked, what's your position? Because we were curious.
Yep.
And some said, it's not something I would do, but that doesn't mean other people in this diocese won't or would do it.
Right.
And that was made very clear, like how you just explained. And I thought that was quite interesting because, again, you said earlier, like people don't generally like gray areas, dealing with those. But this is like an intentional gray area that has been formalized in a way to allow, I don't know, not like different perspectives on it, but to still allow people and priests and parishes to kind of be in community and hold together.
Yeah, which is challenging, right? Because it is something that was not decided by bishops.
Yeah.
It was decided by a group of parishioners who gathered together and take a vote on this, and the vote was in favor of the same-sex blessings. So initially, when that happened in this diocese, I think the first vote for same-sex blessings was, 2001 maybe. It passed, but the bishop at that point said they would not give consent to the motion because a bishop can withhold consent for a motion that's come forward. And at the time he said he would not give consent because it was too divisive and that more dialogue had to happen. There had to be more work done.
Sure.
And so it was delayed, and then a vote came back, and there was more opportunity for deaneries and archdeaneries to talk about it and do work together and try to understand each other, try to understand how someone theologically could make that shift, and acknowledge the fact that it wasn't just an emotional shift that people were wanting to do same-sex blessings. Theologically, they were wrestling with this issue, right? So that it wasn't a simple decision that people went through. And so when it was passed, it was made really clear when the bishop said, yes, I will give consent to this, that it doesn't have to be uniform. It was an acknowledgement of the struggle amongst Christians, but a call for people to go, this is not a make or break kind of thing. This is something that we can, if we can do hard work of continuing to work together, even if we're not in agreement, because we're still in agreement that of who Jesus is. What we're discussing here is how we live this out. Not easy.
No.
Very, very difficult. Much easier, which to me reveals the struggle of wanting to honor the priesthood of all believers and having an oversight of that pushes us a bit.
Yeah.
Because it's not, if you had a strict hierarchy, it's very clear. It just gets, no, that's not happening. End of discussion.
Sure. Which is, other churches, that is like everything in the Roman Catholic Church comes from the Pope on down, right?
Yeah, very hierarchical.
And you were saying the Lutheran Church is more hierarchical. But your example in how you were explaining that, the image I have is like it's a flowing out and then a flowing back, and that like every time that goes out and comes in, something new is being picked up or dropped off because of there's different discussions or things that are occurring along the way. And
it's not a matter of, I think some people on the outside think, oh, this is just, the whim of meeting a social kind of thing that's happening,
caving to culture.
Exactly. And not realizing, no, there are theological discussions.
Yeah.
This is a painful, challenging thing to try to say, do we need to rethink things? And are we doing something new, or are we actually, if we look back in history, realize we're not the first Christians to wrestle with this?
Yeah.
There's signs that they wrestled with this thousands of years ago, and we never even listened to what they did. No, it's not caving to a social movement. It's trying to listen, and it's trying to. And as the bishop, when the bishop first said, "Okay, the motion passed, but I'm going to hold approval of that." That's a pastoral step, right? The bishop's going, this is challenging. This is challenging for all of us. We will continue the dialogue. And I'm not going to give pastoral approval until I'm sure it's not going to till we're ready for pastoral approval. We're ready to walk together in our differences.
Right.
Because there's a lot of stuff we got differences about.
Yeah. So maybe with that in mind, like, what does healthy leadership then look like? Because that strikes me as like a good example of very good leadership.
Yes.
The way that was handled.
Yes.
But there's also all sorts of decisions that are made at a parish level or can be made that can be handled in a healthy way or a not healthy way. And you have tons and tons of experience with that too. So what does that kind of look like in practice, healthy leadership?
I think it looks like in practice that the person that's the overseer of it, so in a parish it's the priest, has to realize that their leadership in the congregation isn't about everything being done the way they want it to be done.
Yeah.
But there are certain things that are non-negotiables in this.
Yeah.
And so the priest's primary area of being the one that's really in charge is in worship. And that's emphasized through the training in seminary, in the sense that worship isn't a matter of our preference and opinion. There is lots of room for styles of music and all kinds of things that can happen within a service. And different congregations have a different ethos. Well, it's not the priest's job to put their ethos on top of that. It's their job to help nurture people's relationship with Jesus. I mean, that's what is going to help people grow in their relationship to Jesus. But there's lots of things that the priest may have a preference for that they have to just kind of lay aside. This is working for this congregation, and it's nothing wrong with this. Yeah. It's okay. I'm the one that needs to make an adjustment, not them.
And it seems like whoever the priest is, they need to have a good working relationship with parish council.
Yes, absolutely.
And those, because they're the representatives of the parish in that sense. And it would be hard if you butted heads constantly.
It would be, it would
maybe
not work.
untenable. Yeah.
It would not work. That's just not a good fit then if that's what's going to happen. I mean, if the parish council's saying we want to change the theology of the worship, well, that's a different thing. Then the priest goes, well, no, it is what it is.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember being at a clergy conference years ago that a member of the clergy who I didn't know very well, obviously was having some theological struggles, wanted in this open discussion forum with the bishop, which clergy conferences all have at some point, they just sort of sit down and have a conversation, wanted to challenge having the creed as part of the service. And the bishop wasn't participating in the discussion. And the bishop stands up and goes, I think we should end this discussion because this isn't anything that we're going to talk about. We are not changing this. It will never be on the agenda at Synod or anywhere to change this because this is essentially who we are. And without talking directly to the person, said, if you're struggling and uncomfortable with that, make an appointment and come and talk to me. But we're not putting this on the table.
Well, I think we'll start wrapping things up here, Al. We've been talking about all sorts of ways leadership can happen and exist in our church and in different churches. So I guess to end this today, we would encourage you to maybe pay a little bit of more attention to how leadership works in your church and what it looks like, and see how it's doing. And not to say that you should go change things, but just it's good to be aware of.
It is. But I think as people, we all like things to be in a nice, neat little package. And I guess one of the things we've brought up on different topics is that, well, if you come to an Anglican church, you might quickly discover things aren't in a neat little package. We're quite comfortable jumping into the gray area and making things a little bit messy. And but there's good opportunity for growth in that.
And that's one of the things that happens when you share responsibility for all levels of decision making and everything like that. So thanks for joining us today. Come check us out on Sundays at 2010 Guilford Drive in Abbotsford. And we'll see you then. Bye.
Bye.